Good morning. So please make sure your cell phone is off. And although I try to recognize Corbin and Joshua every Sunday, today Joshua Rodke is recognized in both of our services as a special lay minister in our church. It's a big deal. So Josh, congratulations. And no matter who you are or where you are in your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. So let's do as we do and begin in silence. Let's take a few seconds to be in the room. May grace be in our heads and in our thinking. May grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. May grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in my mouth and in my speaking. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding. May grace be at our ends and at our departing. And may what we do here contribute to the well-being of all creation. Amen. So the title I have given this time today is Comfort in the Midst of Chaos. So I hope to spend most of the time suggesting how we can live in our current situation, drawing on spiritual resources. Most of them are innate that we don't recognize or don't get uncovered or get distracted from. You already have what you need, mostly. And we're also going to have a magic interlude along the way. And we will take a realistic but hopefully hopeful look at two of the real difficulties we face in doing this work for living in the midst of this chaotic situation. But first, we're going to start by a group activity. And you can't do this because nobody's sitting close to you, but if you're sitting close to somebody, get your elbow ready to jab them if they don't participate in this group activity. Because I don't want to be the only one doing what we're about to do. We're going to sing. The words are there. Here we go. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Third verse, a little more difficult. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm going to let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm going to let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm going to let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. You're pretty good. Thank you. I learned that song when I was 6 years old. I was taught that as part of my church attending. It's just something that my parents did, and consequently their children went. And I liked going to church, as we called it. I had friends there. I had fun. I learned things. And one of the programs that they had in the Baptist church where I grew up for people my age was a thing called the Sunbeams. Some of you remember that? You know that? I want to be a sunbeam for Jesus. My father worked in a store that was more like a general store, and they sold appliances. And one of the kitchen appliances they sold was a Sunbeam Mixmaster. And I could not understand why God wanted me to be that. But in my naive mind, that's the association I made with a sunbeam. It didn't make any sense to me. And nor, looking back, did it make any sense to me that I learned that song. Because that song has roots, deep roots, in African American spirituality. And I was raised in a profoundly racist, segregated community. And we were taught that song in church. This song was written sometime in the 30s. It was written, intended as a children's song. The roots show that it does go back to early African American singing, and it became repopularized during the Civil Rights Movement. This song was sung a lot by people when they were doing sit-ins and marches and that sort of thing, and the message was that each individual had a light, an inner dignity, if you will, that no system of oppression could extinguish. This song that we just sang was sung by the marchers going across the Pettus Bridge into Selma. And the message was, I will carry truth, nonviolence, and justice with me wherever I go. So this light is referred to in the passage in the Jesus narrative that is the foundation for this teaching today. Now, over the past number of weeks, we have covered 7 very brief parables by Jesus. We don't really know in what order they were really told, but Stephen Mitchell in his Gospel According to Jesus put 7 of them strung together, and then as a summary statement, more or less, he puts this teaching. And he said, when you light a lamp, do you put it under a basket or under a bed? Don't you put it on a lampstand? For there is nothing hidden that can be made clear. That is, if you hide something, it can't be made clear. And nothing secret that can't become obvious. Pay attention to what you hear. The measure you give is the measure that you will receive. One of the criteria that scholars use to determine what Jesus more than likely said is the frequency with which a saying appears in the gospel narratives. And this one appears 5 times. You're the light of the world, and we have to let that light shine. And therein lies our comfort and our hope. Now, there are other descriptors other than light that will be applied to those who choose to follow Jesus, and we will get to those along the way. But light is a powerful, powerful symbol in all religions. In Buddhism, the word Buddha means the enlightened one. And in the Jewish Christian tradition, light represents not just faith, but it represents courage, identity, truth, and the refusal to be silenced. So the Jewish creation myth virtually begins with the line, "Let there be light." Now, I have spent many hours in therapy. You wouldn't know it. And in private, reflecting on how that little boy who learned this song when he was 6 years old in a racially segregated Jim Crow world got involved in civil rights when I was 18, much to my parents' dismay, I might add. I knew when I went to the Woolworths in Columbia, Tennessee, and saw water fountains that had the sign colored over one and white only over the other. There was something inherently wrong with that. So I was just entering graduate school when what we now refer to as the war in Vietnam was getting started. And then, just as now, there were people who said this is not a good idea, warned against the United States getting involved in that. They did all they could to argue against it, but those efforts were no more successful than those who spoke against the lie about weapons of mass destruction that led us into Iraq. War has always been in the best interest of what Dwight D. Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex. And further, the distorted understanding of religion that has dominated the Western world for over 1,000 years has a fundamental commitment to violence. Now, some of you are old enough to remember this guy, Walter Cronkite. There was a time when this person was considered the most trusted man in America. And there was a newscaster before him, this man, Edward R. Murrah, who was also indispensable in bringing down the witch hunt that McCarthy did that absolutely ruined so many people's lives. Cronkite was hugely responsible for bringing an end to the war in Vietnam. We don't have those voices today, at least not in positions of power. And I think you might know that sadly this week we just lost Bill Moyers. Bill Moyers and I were in seminary briefly together. There are a lot of reasons for this, that we don't have these voices anymore. The main one, I think, is that the greed of our national religion, which is consumerism, dictates what is on the news and who hears what. So countries that consider themselves powerful continue to use the same useless, destructive mindset. When I was in graduate school, we had a professor, this is in the 60s, there was a great deal of protest against the war in Vietnam and against a number of other things, a lot of chaos. And this professor said, this is nothing new. And he joked and said, you know, when Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, Adam turned to Eve and said, well, my dear, we live in an age of transition. And maybe that's true. Maybe every generation feels something like that about what's going on in the world around it. But where we are, I think, viewed from a global perspective, seems different today. The consequences are more significant. So right now, it seems to me that we are at a crossroads where many of the guideposts we have counted on to sustain our progress in the past are no longer available. Many of our major institutions of learning are under assault, or they are imploding from within. It is very clear that those entrusted with leadership who might be expected to provide responsible governance have become unworthy, untrustworthy. Our current president lies so much about so much, you don't know what to believe. So we don't and can't expect creative solutions from those who are in charge. There's no evidence, indeed, I think the evidence is quite contrary, that our usual expected social institutions can deliver the change that we're hoping for. So we live in this sounds really depressing, but I think it is a fact that we live in a time of cultural depletion. It is a threadbare moment. Some might say this is a dark night of the soul for our country. And I know that we all long for things to go back to the way they were, whether you're on the right or the left. We long for a more peaceful day when we don't seem to get shocked every day by something upsetting. But we don't know when that's going to come. And so I think that what we have to do is trust the evolutionary process. And that we have to learn to trust in, not trust the chaos, but we have to learn to develop trust and hope within the chaotic system where we are. Now, I would argue that Jesus and his disciples lived in quite similar times. And it was in that context that Jesus said to those who followed him, "You are the light of the world." And if we are faithful to the wayless way, our response has got to be, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Now, one of the most frequent comments I hear about what I offer in here, I hear two things. The comment is, this is hard. And usually two things are meant by this. First, it is hard to relinquish beliefs that one has had since childhood. That's true. It's hard to wear the same shoes you wore when you were in the 6th grade. But when it comes to religion, a lot of people want to do exactly that. They want to wear the same clothes they wore in junior high. Things like Jesus did not die for your sins. The Bible is not an infallible document. There is no sky God. Those and similar beliefs, they're hard to let go if you've held on to them since you were a child. Now, some people can look with amusement about how the church in Copernicus and Galileo's time had a hard time accepting that truth. But these same people will doggedly hold on to outmoded religious rituals and language even to this day. So much of Christian thinking, and certainly organization, is still stuck at a pre-Copernican level. If you doubt this, go into any church, look at the hymnal, read the words, listen to the creeds, listen to the prayers, and see if what I'm saying is not the case. Michael Morwood, when he was here talking about prayer, he wrote a book about prayer, said, "What are you asking me to imagine when you pray to a sky God? That God is going to come down and help my ball team win?" But we do pray like that. Letting go is difficult. It's hard. It's even frightening. It is. But my own experience of letting go of that which was no longer wise and useful has saved my life. Hard as it is, growth in religious literacy is critical for a healthy life and a life-giving faith. And I think one of the reasons we are in the mess we're in, particularly when it comes to Christian nationalism in this country, where people can do unspeakable things, like the insurrection of January 6th, when they carried Bibles, crosses, and the Christian flag into the Capitol, is because those people who did that have no real awareness of what is in the Bible, what the cross really means, and what the Christian flag could stand for. If they would not have used them in those ways. So I acknowledge letting go of those beliefs is a hard thing to do. So if you believed all your life that Jesus died to keep you from going to hell, or if you believe there's a hell to go to, or if you believe that there's a blissful heaven where you're going to spend eternity playing a harp, I need to tell you that none of that was part of Jesus' teaching. And none of that was part of what the early Christian church believed. None of it. In our current politics of division and othering, it's difficult to embrace this. But the fact is, this is factually true, that the first creed of the Christian community, what became the Christian community, is found in the writings of Paul, where Paul says that in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, bond nor free. We are all one. Everybody is included. That was the first creed of the church. And yet what the church has become good at is dividing. Separating people, saying you don't belong, you can't belong, you're not worthy, whatever. Here's the truth. Most of the spiritual life is really, I stole this material from Meister Eckhart, by the way. Most of spiritual life is really a matter of relaxing, of what Eckhart calls letting go. It's ceasing to cling, ceasing to insist on our way, ceasing to tense ourselves up for this or against that. It's relaxing. So a second thing that is hard about this way is that it's difficult. I don't think anyone really signs up for a journey that says, oh, by the way, probably the next step is a dark night of the soul. That's not attractive. I think, again, organized religion has been responsible for this. Organized religion needs to get paying members. And so the message has been, just come join our group. If you do that, you'll be saved. Just believe in Jesus and you'll go to heaven. That's it. That's it. That's everything. You don't have to do anything else. Well, we would like for you to give us money to keep this going. So organized religion has fixed it. That for most people, the message has been that being Christian, being a follower of Jesus, is easy. If it gets difficult, if it gets uncomfortable, people either quit coming or they find another place to go that's more to their liking, which being translated means something that's not offensive to their current beliefs. When I decided to go into full-time private practice, which was a decision I made a long time before I had the courage to do it, I went around and asked the people who I knew who were in private practice at that time and who I thought were very successful at what they were doing in private practice, what they thought the secret of their success was. And I wrote down what they said. And one of the pieces of advice, I got many great pieces of advice, and one of the greatest educational efforts I ever got involved in. But one of the pieces of advice I got from a guy who had an office in a building downtown next to the hospital where I trained was, he said, you have to be able to distinguish those who come because they want to get out of the storm and those who come because they're really shopping. Shopping. And I asked him what he meant. And at that time, that hospital, which is no longer in downtown Houston, was across from a department store, which is also no longer in downtown Houston, called Foley's. Remember some of you Foley's? So it was in about this season of the year when rainstorms can come up like that and then go away like that. And when they do, if you're not prepared, people would go into Foley's to get out of the rain. And a really good sales clerk could tell the difference between a shopper and somebody who is there just to get out of the storm. When 9/11 hit, it was on a Tuesday. The next Sunday, all 3 services in that place across the plaza, standing room only. 2 weeks later, business as usual. The storm had passed. I'm going to show you a video, and we're going to get the lights down, and there's sound on this. Video is about 3 minutes long, and it is of a man whose name is Michael Amar. Michael Amar is one of the world's leading magicians. This video was taken sometime in the late 90s, so the people who are watching what Michael Amar are doing are sitting around a table watching him. Michael Amar is going to perform one of the oldest magic effects in the world. As a matter of fact, this effect, which is called the cups and balls, is depicted in Egyptian hieroglyphics. It's that old. And if you bought your child or a grandchild or a niece or nephew a magic set, a version of this trick will be in it called the cups and balls. But you're going to see it performed. Well, you just have to see it. So if we could have the lights out. So this is Michael Amar, 1998, it says. And so watch this.
From the Magical Empire, please welcome the legendary world champion of close-up magic, Michael Amar.
I think this is made in Las Vegas.
People often ask, do magicians have scales the way musicians have scales? You know, something that develops their ability as they perform it. And this is it. It's a classic. In fact, it's kind of a rite of passage for all sleight of hand performers, starting with 3 simple cups and one thing very important, a magic wand. See, because all I have to do is reach and squeeze like this. And I get a little baseball right from the tip of the wand. That's for cup number 1. Now, for cup number 2, all I have to do is take it and spin and tap, and I get a second ball for a second cup. Now, you can do other things with these same props. For example, I could just touch, put a little magic onto the cup, and solid passes straight through solid. That's an impossible penetration. Oh, but that's ball number 1 for cup number 1. That's ball number 2 for cup number 2. For the third, all I have to do is spin the wand twice, once, twice, and tap. I get ball number 3 right where I want it, right on top of the cup. Now that you have them out here, it's time to start the effect. Now, you know, at each phase, I'm actually going to make it easier and easier to follow, so there's no chance for confusion. And if you think about it, it's already pretty simple. All I do is close my hand, okay? Nothing funny. And I push the wand through the hand, and ball number 1 disappears. Now, you may not have known what to expect, so I'll do it again. In fact, I'll do it exactly the same way, just a little different. That's ball number 2. Now, ball number 3, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll actually leave my hand open so that you see the moment that the ball disappears. All I have to do is tap. And when it disappears, it goes back to its cup. That's 1, that's 2, and of course, that's 3. But you know, I said I'd make it easier to follow, so I get rid of one of the balls. I'll even get rid of one of the cups. Now, think how simple it's going to be. I'll even get rid of the wand. 2 and 2, piece of cake, no chance for confusion. I'll even do it in slow motion, 1 ball inside of each cup. No question. All I do is snap, and the balls change places. It's subtle, but you know what? It'd be better if I put 2 cups over 1. I cause this one to join the other one. That way it'd be clear exactly what happened, but I want to make it even easier to follow by getting rid of 1 more ball. I'll get rid of 1 more cup. Now think how simple it's going to be. All I have to do is blow, just a simple blow. And the ball will disappear. I'll do it out here. The ball disappears, it comes back to its cup. Sometimes I put it over here. I get a little snaps till it comes back to the cup. It works every time. And I tell you what, I wanted to end with a surprise. So here's what I'll do. I'll put these back. See, now it's like the 3 shells in the pea. Would it surprise you if I could make this ball disappear and reappear inside any cup you named?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Let's see. See what you got.
Well,
Let's see.
okay, I'll tell you what, I'll do it different. I'll put it away, and this time I'll just snap. Now, when I just snap, you can never tell what'll turn up. Get it? See? Turn up. That's a turn up. That's a lemon. That's a big ball. This fudge for you.
That's pretty cool. So I read just yesterday, that Michael Amar was recently in England, in London, doing a teach-in. He's a very famous teacher of magicians. That piece that you just saw, he practiced for 4 hours a day, every day for 2 years before he ever did it. That's pure sleight of hand. There's no trickery, there's no trick mechanical, anything in that. And if you go on YouTube and you look for Michael Amar, Cups and Balls, you'll see at least 2 presentations of this very trick, and they are both identical. Every move is practiced like a musician practices a piece over and over and over. And the musician may play the piece at Jones Hall and then at Rice University. It sounds the same. It takes practice. Why in the world would we think that following Jesus is any easier? As you know, I love magic, and I have a particular affinity for what in magic we call packet tricks. It's a magic effect that is done with no more than 16 cards. Sometimes you can count 16 cards in your hand and make the person who's watching it swear that you only have 4. And the way you do that is you practice and you practice. And maybe I'll practice a count or a glide or a sleight. And then I'll come back the next day and add something else to it, and the next day add something next to it. And the guy who taught me so much about doing that kind of magic said, you do that, and then you put all the pieces together, and you do it until you can do it not only with not looking at your hands, but with your eyes closed. Then you can show it. Why would we think that the response to follow me and letting your light shine should be any easier than that? I think the churches fail people by doing that. We practice, we work, we fail, but we show up and we keep at it. And every time we go through one of those developmental stages that we've talked so much about in here, we start over. We have to learn skills that are required for that level of development, that level of awareness, and that level of social engagement. It's like learning to play a piece of music. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. You know, those people who walked across the Pettis Bridge in Selma singing that song, they didn't end up at a picnic. But we are grateful that they did what they did. So it's raining out there. Not literally. But it's storming out there, and we have to decide, are we here to get out of the rain, or are we really here to shop? So our nation is moving deeper into the grips of a patriarchal system. And the irony is that this system actually has made some major accomplishments. But as we know it today, the patriarchal power has a huge appetite for control. Social scientist, academic psychologist, at the beginning of what we call system psychology in a place called Duluth, Minnesota, actually, started doing research on the dynamics of the abusive family. And they put together a thing that's called the Duluth Wheel. I'm going to put a link in the summary that goes out so that you can look this up, because it's really been modified and expanded on and becomes a really social, very helpful tool for teaching social engagement and how societies function. But it started out with a family, understanding a family. And what they've studied is what has to happen for a dangerous, damaging system to stay in power. And I want to give you the marks that these social scientists have isolated that say creates this kind of destructive unit. First, there are lies, distortion, and misinformation. The people who are ahead of such a group suppress the truth, distort the facts, to the advantage of those in power, while at the same time including some positive things to distract people from seeing the oppression. There is the suppression of research. Only that which reinforces the governing ideology is approved, especially when it comes to sensitive issues such as education, medicine, nuclear power, and how dissidents are muzzled. Next, there is demonization and intolerance. So people in power frequently use ridicule and shame to marginalize or eliminate those who disagree with them. There's economic abuse. Money and funding are used as a power tool and as a means to gain support, especially in political voting. There is exclusion. Those who are willing to collude with those in power are included, and those who offer resistance are shut out. And then there is the hijacking of others, so that any form of alternate thinking or something that's labeled countercultural, such as transgender support, for example, is viewed not only as with suspicion but ridicule and to be excluded. Do we have any of these in our culture? I was conversing with a dear friend about this material, Duluth stuff, because it keeps getting updated and psychologists are interested in this kind of thing. And my colleague said, you know, I'm living with a sense of doom. And you know where that word comes from? What was Jesus' most frequent thing that he talked about? The kingdom of God. Very poor translation. The dumb in kingdom became doom, because the king had a list of rules and regulations to govern what went on in the kingdom, and that book was called the dumb book, doomsday book. So that if you were convicted of a crime in that time or sentenced to death, you were said to be under the doom book or doomsday. And about 1300 or so, that word got changed to be your fate. I was doomed. And then that word about 1600 was transferred to the final judgment day, when God would determine people's eternal fate. So Judgment Day came to be called Doomsday. And that's the origin of that particular thing. It has nothing to do with what I'm teaching. I just love that sort of stuff. But it seems that what we thought was a very clever, convenient civilization that was Noah's Ark carrying us to the future has actually turned out to be the flood. So what are we to do? Where is their hope? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. So again, I remind you, religion provides stability. Spirituality, on the other hand, offers a way to live fully, beautifully, bravely in the face of instability, in the face of change. Spirituality is not about getting it all together and keeping it that way. Rather, spirituality leads to develop trust in the evolving wisdom of creation itself. Religion wants to nail things down, and spirituality wants to participate in evolution. Okay, object lesson. This is a candle. And I'm going to invite the candle to manifest a flame. I learned that language from Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh would never say, I'm going to ring the bell. He would say, I'm going to invite the bell to ring. So we have manifested a flame on the candle. Now here's a question. Where was the flame before it was there? And I want you to look at this flame. It is not the same flame from 1 millisecond to the next, is it? It's constantly changing. Another flame, another flame, another flame. You know, that's true for you too, and me. I'm not the same me that was here last week. And I won't be the same me next week when I show up here. We're different. We're like this candle. And no one lights a candle and then hides it. Otherwise, it goes out, doesn't serve its purpose. So, we're like this candle. We're just melting away. The old folks' home is somewhere down around here. I mean, look at it. It's a race between enlightenment and senility. You wonder which is going to come first, you know? The word senility is the root for word we get the word wisdom from. Senile is actually the word wisdom. And it is also the word we get the word senate from, which explains a lot right there. So life is like this. It looks constant, but it's not. Constantly coming in and going out of existence, and we cannot make permanent what is temporary. If we try to do that, we kill it. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. It's an active belief. It matters what you believe. So this past Thursday, this woman, her name is Faith Kipyegon, however you say it. She ran in Paris in an attempt to break the 4-minute mile. She didn't do it. She missed it by 5 or 6 seconds. I believe that she's going to do that. I believe that she is going to be able to do that. Or some female is going to be able to do that. Now, why would I believe that? It has never been done by a female. It was long believed that no one could run a mile in under 4 minutes, ever. Experts in various areas assured people it would not be done, it could not be done. Doctors said the human body was not built to run a mile in under 4 minutes. That if a person tried it, it would probably cause death. Couldn't be done. Then in 1954, when I was a junior in high school, there was a man, and almost everybody in this room knows his name, whether you were born or not. You know the name of this guy right here, whose name was Roger Bannister. And in 1954, Roger Bannister ran a mile in under 4 minutes. And today, he is remembered for that feat, right? He became, by the way, he became a well-regarded neurologist in his life. Now, here's something that most people do not remember or know. The next week, after Roger Bannister ran a mile in less than 4 minutes, the next week, in 6 races around the globe, 6 men ran a mile in under 4 minutes. A month after he did this, 8 men in 1 race ran a mile in under 4 minutes. What had changed? The belief that it could be done. This little light of mine matters. We have to believe that. We have to hang on to that. And now, over 2,000 people men have run a mile in under 4 minutes. Your light matters. What we believe about our light matters. So, do we live in the midst of chaotic times? No doubt. They are difficult and dark. It is not easy letting go. It is hard to practice what we say believe. However, I want you to look around you. Literally, seriously, look around at the people sitting here. You're in a room of about 100 people who will leave here and make a choice to let their light shine or not. And if you do, we will live in a more hopeful world. And there are about as many watching online as there are in this room today. So multiplies by 2. So we're not without hope as long as we let our light shine. So the teacher, Jesus, that we're using to light our way for guidance on this way, says very clearly, let your light shine. That's our hope. And in the midst of that hope, you'll find comfort for our chaos. No matter where you go this week, no matter what happens, remember this, you carry precious cargoes, so watch your step, and I'll see you here next week. Thank you.